In this video, we're going to take a look at the 4 example of rigs that I've created for Autodesk University class on rigging for visualization. So what I've done is I've created 4 files that are typical objects or typical system that we would see in a visualization project, and I've created some rigs that we'll be using throughout the class to give example of the different constraint and control system that we're going to discover during this presentation. So what we have here is a reclining chair, and we've got a control object here to control the reclining chair. Essentially, when we do a rig, it's a system of dependencies within a system that controls all the various elements of that system from a very simple set of controllers. So for a character, for example, we've got a lot of mathematics and logic happening into the movement of the human body, so we will rig to very few controllers so that the animator doesn't have to go and rotate every joint every time they have to do an animation. So that's one example of rigging. For a reclining chair like this, if I wanted to open this reclining chair as an animator, I would have to go and rotate this, move the seat forward, rotate this the feet holder here up, rotate this portion here. So there's a lot of animation to do. So every time you have to animate this system, you have to go in every single element and animate all of that. Or what you can do is a control system or a rig that will be animated when only one object is moving in the scene, which is the controller over here. So what we've done is this controller, and we've got a circle here, and when I grab it to move it, I have the ability to move it left and right, and it opens the reclining chair all automatically. So by just moving this left and right, all of this here is animated or moving independently of the movement of this object here. So let's take an example of what an animator would do in order to animate this. Right now I don't have any animation in my scene. I'm going to turn on auto key, go to frame maybe 20, open the reclining chair, and then go to maybe frame 50 and close it down. Now I've got frame 20 here. I'm just going to use it, and I'm going to copy it to maybe frame 35. So now we have a full animation of this opening, staying there, and then closing back. Because we've animated only one element, if I don't like the speed of that animation, it's very easy to grab all the keyframes, move them, slide them, make them speed up or slow down. Could make it to over 100 frame. And now what we've got is the chair opening, staying there, and closing down over 100 frame. So the animator doesn't have to go in every single joint to change the animation in order to make this all work together. So let's take a look at how this was set up. In the class itself, I'll just pretty much give the example of how the rig work, but in this video I'll go a bit deeper so that at home you can explore a little bit more of what's happening in this rig here. So what we've got is a control object, which is it's just a spline, and we've got geometry here. And usually when you do a rig system like this, what you can do is go into the filter selection here. Whoops, move to the left here. We've got the filter selection here, and now it's set to all, so I can grab the geometry, I can grab anything I want, but I can also go here and say just allow me to select the shapes. So if I only filtering to the shapes, if I try to grab anything else than actual splines, I'm not able to grab that. So I'm not going to make any mistakes by grabbing this and rotating. If I'm in auto key mode or whatever, I'm not going to grab objects that I don't want to select to animate. So I just go here in shapes, and I can only grab that shape and move it left and right. So that's a trick for rigging when you're basing everything on control objects like this. That's pretty useful. So let's take a look at this circle here. You can see that if I try to move it in Y or in Z, I cannot do it because it's constrained to only be able to move on the X axis. How to do this? You go into the hierarchy panel here. The third option here is called Link Info, and if I turn it on, you can see that it can only move because everything else has been locked. So it only can move in X. If I try to move it in Y or Z, it's just not going to react. If I try to rotate this, it's not going to react as well. And if I try to scale it, you can see that the icon is scaling, but the actual shape is not scaling at all because it's all constrained in those transformations. So that's pretty useful to be able to do a control object that will move only on this axis. Now let's take a look at the controller itself. We're going to go into the position of that controller. We're going to open the controller here, and you can see that the position, the X position here, is a float limit, which means that it's a limited movement. It's limited to the left and to the right. And how to do this, I'm going to right click here and show you the properties. We've just limit this from 7 to -7, so that's the upper limit and the lower limit. So now I cannot move it past this line here. Now, how we did connect all of this, it's a very simple example of rigging. We didn't do a lot of very complex mathematics in there. Essentially, this controller is using the reaction manager, and all of this is constrained to that object. So this is the master object, the limited controller that we have here, and it controls the position, the rotation of all the rest of the objects that are within that system. So let's take a look at what's happening in there. So we've got this object here, the back of the chair, and when we move it from left to right, we adjust the rotation. So this is rotating independently of the position of this. Same thing here. We've got the seat that's moving a little bit forward. We've got the feet holder that's going up, and inside of the feet holder here, we've got a mechanism that's all based on IK chain. So just by moving the IK goal here, we're able to bring all that mechanism out, and it feels like something's happening inside to make this come out. So that's kind of cool for animation. It gives it a little bit more credibility to the whole system. And we're rotating this thing here exactly in the same way by using the reaction manager. If you want to take a look at the whole system, I'm just going to go in wireframe to show you. Now we only see the geometry, but if I go into the layer manager, there's a layer called helper. You can now it's hidden, so I'm going to unhide it, and you'll see that there's a bunch of little helpers here that I'm using to zero out the rotation and also to move. So if you can take a look at what's happening in there, and also the IK goals that are here are also invisible when I just turn off that layer, or if I hide this layer. So it's cleaner when comes the time to animate and render. So that's the reclining chair. That's pretty much a very basic example of how you can do a simple rig to simplify the process of animating this. So I'm going to open another one called Cross Trainer. This example is interesting because there's a couple of constraints in there that are kind of a really good example of how you can rig a system with interesting animation. So it's the same idea as before. If I go into the filter and shapes, if I try to grab anything, I can't, but I can grab this yellow circle here and move it left and right. Same idea as before. We've locked it in all of those axes that we don't use, and also we've created a limited float limit controller that goes from left to right, that defines the movement of the system. So what we've done, we've created a full cycle of animation. So I don't have any animation yet, but if I move this from left to right, I'll be able to do my animation. Very simply, turn on auto key, go to frame maybe 25, move it to the right, and because the controller of this object here in the Y position is set to loop, as soon as I've got an animation, it's going to loop indefinitely. So what's good about this is I can easily change the speed, make it to go faster or slower, and it's very easy to set up. The other thing about this system is that now we've got one character in a gym doing some exercise, but if I want to have a couple of more, what I'll do is I'll go here and merge, and I'll just grab exactly the same file, Cross Trainer rig. I'll merge all the objects in, and I'll apply, there's going to be some duplicate name, but I really don't care for now. So I'm going to merge everything here, and I'm going to use the scene material that's already there. And then if I move this to the right, now I've got two systems. One of them is animated, and the other one I want to animate it at a different speed because I want it to be, I don't want to feel that they're like exactly in sync. It's going to be more random. So I'm going to zoom into this this control object here, grab it, do exactly the same thing, turn on auto key, go at frame maybe 40, move it to the right, same idea, and now we've got two characters doing exercise at a different speed. So if you got like 10 or 15 of them, it's going to give a lot of movement to your environment. So if you're doing an interior, or if you're doing the visualization of a house, just by putting this character moving there, it just gives some life to your walkthroughs. So right now I'm just going to grab all of this. I don't need that. I'm going to delete it. Whoops, delete. Oh yeah. I'm going to go back in all here, grab all of this, and delete that. And we're going to go back to that system here to analyze how it was set up. So let's play this. So the first thing, the main control of this object is this circle here in the back. So the circle is rotating on itself, but it controls, and actually I'm going to go and make sure that we can see all of the, so that's good, it's all visible. So what we've got is we've got this object here that rotates around that circle. That object is defining the position of the IK chain, which is made of this this bar here and this bar, and the IK goal is set up to this handle here. So when this is moving, this IK goal stays the same. So that's why we've got it stay in position over there. So as this rotates, you can see that the whole system is animated this way. How we did the character is very simple. We grab the end and the motion panel of the biped. You can go here in the key info, do a planted key, and in the planted key you can go into the IK and set it to be IK to an object. So right now I've IK'd this to be connected to the this loft object there. So as soon as this object is moving, the end is moving. The same thing for the feet here. We've done exactly the same thing. We've connected it to this how would you call it? This feet holder called Circle 02, and it's as soon as this is moving, the feet is planted to that, so it's moving with it. And we also have this up and down movement for the character. So what we've done for that is I'm just going to go in wireframe so we can see a bit better. I'm going to grab the center of mass of this object, and if we go into the controllers here, and I go in the horizontal position, we can see that I've added a position list controller with a position XYZ controller here, and I'm going to open it up. We don't have a lot of space here, but at least you can see that now we've got a reaction here. So we've set up a reaction with the reaction manager based on the position of this, and we've created this up and down movement that gives the character a little bit more credibility. So that's pretty much how it was set up. Just play this, and we've got a full cycle of animation. So instead of having to animate every single joint separately and do this up and down movement every time you want to do the animation, the animator just jump in, say I want to have 5, 6 of them. It's going to load it in the visualization project. Just go here, turn on auto key, move it, and define how they want that cycle of animation to happen in their scene. And if they want to have something more complex, they can even go in auto key, say, well, I want to go back, to that position here. Go back up and, I don't know, do some crazy animations with that system. Very simple to set up. Alright, not the best animation I've done ever, but you understand the idea. Now I'm going to go a little bit more complex. We're going to open this robot arm here. And the robot arm, what I like about it is that there's a lot of things happening in there. So it's pretty much an IK chain that to which we've added a lot of little things. So in the animator, when they are opening the scene, only have to grab this control object. Again, same idea as before. If we go in shapes, I cannot select anything else in the rig itself. I can only grab the shape here, and I can animate with it. So it's I call that the triple circle controller. So we've got 3 circles on top of each other in different direction, and that's pretty much to say to the animator, with this you can move and you can rotate to move your system. So what I wanted to do with this is have all of these mechanisms react automatically, or give the impression that those are driving the position of the end of the arm here, and it's all driven by those controls that are here. So when the animator jumps in, they just need to grab the control object here, and you can see that everything else is reacting accordingly. So you can see that the tubes here, how do you call that? It's the fluid tubes there. I have no idea what it's called, but I'll find out before the class. So those tubes are reacting automatically. So if I go up and down, you can see that it feels like they're driving the movement of that arm. Same thing here in the back. We've got the controls here, and it's all set up with reaction controller. They're all animated accordingly. So if I move left and right, you can see that there's a wheel there. and if I rotate the this here, all the handles are driving are giving the impression that they're driving this system here. So a couple of things that are happening in there. You can see that if I move the this left and right, you can see the wires are following, so that's kind of cool. And also, if we take a look at the gear here, the gear is set up with a wire, and I'll go back to that, a wire parameter that drives the rotation to make it feel like if it's driving the rotation of the robot arm. So I'm going to go slower so we can see the step-by-step gear here, like this. And so when it comes the time to play with the end of the arm, so I can rotate it in all directions. I can do some twisting here. I can rotate it in any direction that I want. And if I want to open this the end of the robot, I just go here and grab the yellow circle. Same idea as before. All based on reaction. I'm going to zoom out so we can see it. So if I move it up and down, it's going to open the handle. So same idea as before. If I go into the layer manager, I'm going to turn on all my helpers so we can see that there's a couple of things happening in there. So how do I drive all of this? So first of all, the end here is driven by this here. So it's following the position and the orientation. So there's an orientation constraint that define where it's looking at. You can see that in there's a couple of IK chain, and those IK chain are all based on reaction. So the position of the IK goal is all based on the reaction here. So if I move this up and down, you can see that the IK goals are moving out, and they're bringing the handle with them. And that's all connected to that. So as soon as this is rotating, the rest is rotating as well. Also, what I wanted to do is have the ability of when this is moving up and down or left or right, the orientation is preserved. So it's not going to continue. The orientation of this is not a continuity of this arm. It's always based on the orientation of that. So if I just move this up and down, automatically this will stay straight or in the orientation of the handle. It's really the animator that defines where this is where this should be rotating. So when you're moving object from up to down, using the handles there, your animation will be much simpler to do. Alright, so now what we've got from here, from there we can see that right there. I'm going to go in all, selection all, so we can select everything. There's an IK goal, and this IK goal is linked to that, so we've got an IK chain going from there to there. That's pretty much how it was set up, and all of this here is just linked to the objects themselves. So this object here has a look at constraint that looks here, and in the class we're going to take a look at how to set that up. And we've got a tube here, and we've got a look at constraint that looks over there, and in the middle here we've got a tube that is set to be right in the middle of those two objects. If we go into the motion panel of the position, we've got a position constraint, and that position constraint is based on those two objects. And so it's always in the middle of those two objects. So if we really expand this system, just going to move it down, you can see that it can expand and it can also contract. I'm going to move it back here like this. So it can really extend, and if I extend too much, you can see there's some space in there. So that's pretty much the idea. Alright, so we've got the same thing here, same idea. We've connected this to that, this to that. So if we move backward or forward, all of this is following. For the wires here, what we've done is very simple. We've created a spline, and I'm just going to grab one of those splines. And this spline has a spline IK control, and I'll go into that into the class. It's connected to 2 points. One point is over here, and one point is over there, and those points are connected either to this or to that. They're just linked. So whenever this is moving left or right, just going to grab the control here, moving left or right, the control points are moving with it. So the shape of the spline is set to we have only 2 vertex in this shape, and there's a busy controller that moves the shape up. So when it's going left or right, it's just giving the impression that the wires are stretching. And here what we have on this object, we've got a wire parameter. So we've got a mathematical equation, and just to show you this mathematical equation, we're going to go in the schematic view. I'm going to schematic view and isolate the object that is currently selected, and double click on the wire parameter so we can see this. So essentially we've got a mathematical equation, very simple. We're multiplying the rotation in Z of the robot arm by 8.7, and 8.7 is just the aspect ratio, or the difference between the size of this and the size of this big wheel. So there's a difference, there's a factor of 8.7 between the size of this wheel and this wheel. So when we're rotating around that wheel, it feels that it's rotating within those little the holes there, and the gears are following each other. And the rest here is all rotation based on reaction. So if we go into the reaction manager, we see that there's a lot of reactions happening in there, and it's all stuff that we've covered in the previous rig. So all of this is all based on reaction. So when we've got this, we only go into the control objects there, and we grab either the yellow circle there to move it up and down, and grab this control object, and everything else is animated automatically. So that's the robot arm. The last example that I'll be showing, and again in the class it's going to be a very limited time devoted to those examples, because we're going to come back to it. But the reason why I'm doing this in a longer video is that you can see a bit more when you'll be home. So what we've got here is a garage door example. We've got a control object here, same idea as before. The big difference here is that we've got a control object on this side if we're outside of the house, and I've created another control object here exactly the same way inside it. So I can grab either this one, move it left or right, or I can grab this one, move it left or right, and both of them are connected. They're just an instanced controller. So if I move this left or right, or if I move this left or right, it's going to exactly have exactly the same effect. So that's kind of cool, because if I'm outside of the house, I can animate the door going up and down, and if I'm outside, and if I'm inside, I can just grab this again and move it left or right. So how this system was set up, I'm gonna show you the effect of it first. By moving this left or right, we're going to open the garage door. It's following a spline that is going up to give you the shape of the rail there. We've got, and I'm just going to minimize this window here, like this, so we can take a look at the example of what's happening. So we've got this wheel here that is dependent on the movement of this circle. Again, that's a reaction control, but it gives the impression that this mechanism is all connected. It's all based on the rotation of this here, and we've got a chain here that is fully rotating. So the chain and the garage door is following what we call a spine IK, and the spine IK is rotating around that as well, and we've got the rotation of this as well that is connected to all that. So we kind of feel that this garage door is opening because of the motor that is in there that's rotating this, giving the chain movement here to that, rotating this, then controlling this, and rotating the system here to move the garage door up. So when we're doing an animation, oh yeah, that's true, I forgot to mention that, because that spline here is, we've added a spline IK, we've got control objects on the spline IK, and I've just created a reaction so the chain goes up and down, so we have a secondary movement in the chain here, so it's not too static, it goes up and down. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to unhide all the layers so we can see, I don't need to see the lights. Here we go. So we've got different control objects here. So essentially we've got a big spline object there, and this, I'm just going to maximize, try to see a little bit better. Go back here, maximize this window. There's so much stuff going on in there. So okay, we've got a spline here. We've attached a spline IK control, and all of those chain here are just linked together, and they're attached to that spline. So whenever that spline is changing shape, the chain will just follow that shape as well. So if I just rotate all of that, or move that around, you can see that the chain is following. So that's how we've animated this object here. If we take a look at the position of this controller of this, I'm going to go back the control objects to show the, anyway, that's a reaction. I'm going to go back here in animation reaction manager. We've got a lot of reaction happening, and that's one of them. It's just moving up and down based on the position of this here. So we'll cover all of that during the rigging class, but we'll see how the spline IK works. We'll see how to use it for just moving those objects up and down in the non-looped spline IK, and we're going to also see how to make it in a looped Spline IK. So that's pretty much the Spline IK. Sorry. So that's pretty much the idea of the 4 rigs that we have in there. And please feel free to look at that and explore and change some stuff and try your own based on those examples. And you've got the files with the video, so you're able to go in there and try more.